Hello, I'm Brendan Runham, and I'm reviewing the academic paper by authors Aravindan and Anand regarding scheming a proficient auto-scaling technique for minimizing response time and load balancing on Amazon AWS cloud. Now, just a point here, we're talking about virtual machines and EC2 on the Amazon cloud. We're not talking about Kubernetes or containers. So what's the problem? Cloud service algorithms for distributing load. We have load balancing and we have auto-scaling, but both need to address cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, and performance improvement. Why is this still an issue? Well, existing algorithms don't address multiple issues. We don't have forecasting, slow to decide based on previous history, if that's invoked, cannot deal with complex loads, cannot adapt to increasing and decreasing loads, not fault redundant and aware, and not capacity aware. The authors point out that other people have done some work in this area. So their main idea is that they're going to deploy what is called an auto load distribution algorithm, or ALD. It's meant to be used across diverse VM instances, not just one type. And basically, it tries to find the type of bottleneck VM, or the worst one, and scales up that type. So they have an algorithm there to do exactly that. So it basically hunts for the most utilized VM and creates another instance. How is this better? So we're comparing with or without ALD auto-scaling here, and ALD did reduce the response time. So it's given us a bunch of VM instances that were deployed, response times before auto-scaling, and then after auto-scaling. And it's a little bit unclear, but we're assuming that after auto-scaling is using the ALD. And in the graph, we can see that the response time after auto-scaling is below that before auto-scaling. One thing to note is that, interestingly, the response time is going up with the VM instances. In fact, it almost seems linear before auto-scaling. In order to do this, they used Amazon Web Services. They actually deployed in various availability zones. They used instances of T2 Micro, so that's the smallest you can get, and they got their metrics from Amazon Web Services CloudWatch service in terms of response time and number of requests. Now, these are 7 pages that are extremely hard to read, are full of grammar and typos, which really detract from the integrity. There's a lot of extra wording and emotional wording, which is actually hard to keep track of what they're actually talking about. And there's some very weird assumptions in there, such as an assumption that load balancing is an entirely new method, whereas load balancing has been around 30-odd years, 40-odd years. The testing method is a little bit unclear. So what wasn't described clearly was what the input load was there a pattern to it, or was it just static? And whether they tested all of the machines in all of the availability zones at the same time, or whether they just generated load locally on each of those as they went. The results are very unclear as well. It seems very strange that the response time would rise along with the number of VMs. You'd expect it almost to go the other way. So a little bit unsure about that, and they have not compared their results to others' work. In fact, it's really unclear whether they compared it to the standard load balancer that comes with Amazon Web Services or not. So I'm not quite sure. If they're comparing no load balancer whatsoever with their load balancer, then it's hardly a reasonable way to say that their algorithm is working well or not. They're not actually comparing it against any load balancer. Frankly, I wouldn't recommend reading this, and I would just ignore it. Okay, that's it from me. Ciao, ciao.